What's up, team? Hope everybody is doing well today. We are covering advertising management today. It's a fun topic because I think it's very practical for you guys on how careers in this industry can work a lot. And so I hope you get a lot out of this as well. This is a fun chapter to teach. I've swam in these waters before professionally and everything. So if you're curious about ad management and anything that we talk about in further depth, please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to help you. All right, so first of all, we start using the term advertising and marketing, and sometimes people use public relations and act as if everything is the same thing, right? But they're definitely not. So I want to first have us define what advertising actually is. Advertising is a paid, mediated, so it means that it goes through a mediator, right? Whether that mediator is a Facebook or a newspaper or whatever, right? There's an in-between, so it's not direct, form of communication from an identifiable source designated to persuade the receiver to take some form of action, right? Advertising is different than marketing communications, largely because of that mediated source. Right, so, the first question that everybody asks is, all right, well, what's the ROI of advertising, right? What's the return on investment of advertising? Well, I mean, wouldn't it be great if we could just give a one-for-one number? Just can't do that, right? It depends on a lot of different things. Number one, your advertising spend. How much should you spend? Depends on your goals, right? I mean, like if you're wanting to sell, 1 million units next year, you probably should spend more than if you wanted to sell 5, right? I mean, depends on your brand equity, right? I mean, if Coca-Cola does something, they can get more press for just having made a minuscule announcement than maybe a small, teeny tiny soda company could get by making a great commercial, right? So brand equity means that the larger your brand equity, you might not need to spend as much. Certainly depends on the size of your company as well, right? I mean, if your company is incredibly large, like I just said about brand equity, you might not have to spend as much to make as much of a splash. Depends on your total revenue, right? I mean, advertising costs money because that mediated source means that you have to, pay someone. And so if you don't have very much money to pay, well, then, you're not going to be as successful, right? Depends on the structure of your company for how much you should spend. If you have an incredibly complicated company, you might have to spend a little bit more because you've got to walk the consumer down a deeper funnel, and obviously the size of your overall market, right? I mean, if you have a significant amount of competitors that are also advertising, right, you might have to spend a little bit more to break through that noise. Kind of on average and everything, and we'll talk about different ways that you can actually break down advertising budgets here in just a little bit. But by and large, it typically should be, for small businesses, somewhere between 10 and 20% of your projected revenue that you'd like to have it overall. Right, so, advertising, there's two key thoughts about the advertiser's role in the economy, right? So who is in, it's more of a conversation about who is in control of the advertising experience, right? Is it on side one that advertising is what affects customer preferences and things like that? Or on side two, the right-hand column that you're looking at, is it that advertising informs consumers about product attributes and just about product attributes itself? It doesn't necessarily change the way that you value those attributes. It's just telling you more about them, right? So on side one, the left-hand column, that advertising actually is there to change your mind about a product. And on side two, it's saying, no, advertising doesn't really change your mind. It just reinforces what you think and calls out specific attributes. You can make the argument for both of these. Feel free to press pause if you want to and scan your way through these columns. I understand at some level with these things, I think you're talking semantics, but it's important to have that conversation, I think, between the left-hand side column and the right-hand side column here, because it can affect the way that you actually build your advertisement, right? Are we trying to change someone's mind, or are we just trying to call out specific attributes and help someone come to a decision, in a different way? So what is advertising designed to do, right? What are these functions of advertising? Well, we have 5 key functions of advertising that we're trying to do. Item number 1 would be to inform people, right? We're just literally making consumers aware of our brand. Perhaps it's making them aware of a distinct or new feature about our brand that is new to our product, or that our that our competitors do not have, or potentially we're teaching new uses for this product, right? I mean, if we're teaching new uses of the product, right, we're providing targeted information to our market so that they can think differently about our product. Look at the ad to the right-hand side of your screen, right? I'm not necessarily trying to sell you on Campbell's cream of mushroom soup here. What I'm doing in this ad, if I'm Campbell's, is I'm trying to show you a new way that you can use Campbell's cream of mushroom soup that you might not have thought about, right? This isn't trying to say, our soup is the best. It's, hey, did you know you could actually use the soup to cook with? I'm making you aware of a distinct or new feature of this, right? Other ways that you could use inform is if you have a relatively new product offering.
Hi, I'm Mike, founder of DollarShaveClub.com. What is DollarShaveClub.com? Well, for $1 a month, we send high-quality razors right to your door. Yeah, $1. Are the blades any good? No. Our blades are f***ing great. Each razor has stainless steel blades, an aloe vera lubricating strip, and a pivot head. It's so gentle a toddler could use it. And do you like spending $20 a month on brand name razors? 19 go to Roger Federer. I'm good at tennis. And do you think your razor needs a vibrating handle, a flashlight, a back scratcher, and 10 blades? Your handsome-ass grandfather had 1 blade and polio. Looking good, pop-up! Stop paying for shave tech you don't need. And stop forgetting to buy your blades every month. Alejandro and I are going to ship them right to you. We're not just selling razors, we're also making new jobs. Alejandro, what were you doing last month?
Not working.
What are you doing now?
Working.
I'm no Vanderbilt, but this train makes hay. So stop forgetting to buy your blades every month and start deciding where you're going to stack all those dollar bills I'm saving you. We are DollarShaveClub.com, and the party is on.
Right, so Dollar Shave Club in that ad, right? I mean, certainly towards the end, they told you where you could buy it, but this wasn't necessarily a sales pitch to purchase Dollar Shave Club, right? This was informing you of the different components of the brand and why current shaving brands have done you a disservice with everything that they do, right? So, this was an ad that was geared to inform, not necessarily to sell. Right? Advertising can be geared towards influencing, right? So look at these 2 milk ads right here, and I want to show you. What the difference between these two are, right? So we can have what's called primary influence and secondary influence. So primary influence is not brand specific; it's category specific, but it's not brand specific. So the Got Milk campaigns, right? We're not advertising a specific brand of milk or anything like that, right? We're just trying to say you should drink milk, right? So, large groups of suppliers or an industry might get together to build up demand for their entire entire segment, but it's not specific to, the actual company. Then we have what's called secondary influence. What secondary influence is that it is brand specific, right? So Fairlife milk, right? They're not necessarily trying to build up your taste for milk. We assume that the person that we're targeting this ad to is already a milk drinker. What secondary influence is that we're trying to build your demand for this specific brand, right? So the second goal that we can accomplish with advertising is influence. Right, we can remind people with our advertising, right? So this reminding people is especially great for older brands. It's also a good thing to do to remind consumers that they have a choice in their advertising, right? Coca-Cola in this billboard. I'm not necessarily trying to inform you about Coca-Cola. I'm not even trying to influence you that Coca-Cola is a better beverage than Pepsi or another competitor. Right, what I'm doing in this advertisement for Coca-Cola is to remind you that we exist, right? This can happen for older brands, right? People forget about you. It becomes so much a part of life that you can forget about it, and it's been a long time since you purchased one, right? So Coca-Cola in this ad is seeking to remind people. Advertising can also add value, right? So it's not even necessarily that I'm telling you about a new feature. What I'm doing is I'm influencing the way that you perceive a brand, or I might frame your thinking about my product, right? So Michelin in this ad, it's one of the most famous ads of all time. What Michelin was trying to do with this advertisement is say, you know what, you spend a lot of money on your car, but you don't realize that the thing that actually touches the road is your tire. And so tires matter for how your car performance, how your driving performance actually is, right? And so people didn't ever perceive that way, right? They just thought that your car was the thing that made a difference in how you drive. They didn't think that tires could necessarily have an effect on that. So we were influencing your perception in that. Additionally, Apple, with when it came out with the iPod, had this super famous color scheme campaign with these neon colors, right? So as opposed to just a new way to listen to music, what Apple sought to do with this, with the silhouette and the neon and the very prominent white cord with this, is say, this isn't just a way to listen to music. This is a way to make life more exciting and add that flavor, that vibe that music provides us. That this is what the iPod allows you to do. It framed your thinking on that. And finally, advertising can seek to assist moving the consumer down the funnel. Right? It's still, once again, it's not necessarily selling right here. It's making the sales process easier. So look at the landing page screenshot on the left-hand side here. Right? I mean, certainly we're advertising this pain-relieving thing, but if you notice in this, they're actually not selling you on this pain medication. What we're really just trying to do is get you to schedule a consultation, maybe submit your information in that bottom right-hand part. Even if you wanted to on this landing page, you couldn't buy this pain medication. The goal was to make the actual sale later on in the process easier for this physician. Or it might move the consumer down the funnel. As you're seeing in the bottom right, John Loomer is actually not trying to necessarily sell you on his services. What he's trying to do is gain more information from you to see if you're a good candidate for him to sell to. All right, so 5 things that advertising can do for us. Okay, alternatives to how you can advertise. All right, so what are the different ways that a brand who seeks to advertise, what are the different ways that they can do that? Well, number one, you can do it all yourself, right? You can do it in-house inside of your own company. Well, there are some pros and cons to that. The biggest con to that is that you got to hire somebody to do that, right? Or you got to do it yourself. It necessitates employing an advertising staff and absorbing all of those operational costs internally, right? You've got to hire a really smart guy or a really smart girl to advertise all of your stuff. Okay, so option number 2 is that you can purchase those advertising services a la carte, right? So when you need an ad campaign, you hire the advertiser, whenever you need it. So this might be, a freelancer or a part-time person that you only call when you need specific ad stuff, right? The biggest advantage to this is you only pay for whatever you need when you need it, right? It can save you a lot of costs here, and you can still access top talent in in your industry or with whatever you need to do. Like if you need Facebook ads, you could find the guy or girl who does a great job with Facebook ads. The biggest negative with this, though, is that it can be really dysfunctional, right? I mean, it means that you've got to find the right person. You've got to have that right resource. It's challenging to get in touch with them, right? I mean, email or phone call or a Slack message, right? I mean, all of that communication takes time, and it can lead to projects coming late, right? You might have miscommunication about what something costs or the scope of work, anything like that. So it can be dysfunctional. And it can also mean that because you're only hiring them on an as-needed basis, that you're likely not their top priority, right? What if somebody else is hiring them on an as-needed basis and they got in line before you? You might not be their top priority. Heck, they might have a day job or something like that. So prioritization can be an issue with this. Well, your final option that you could do is to use a full-service advertising agency, right? You have an agency on retainer. The big advantage of this is that, you get access to top talent that's cross-trained, right? They're not just working on your brand. They're working on more than just your brand. And so they can learn lessons from other industries, right? On a day-to-day basis. They can see, this industry is doing a particular thing, and that might have relevance or bearing on your company, right? And so they've got that cross-training capability that, really can provide you a lot of value. You might get access to better media buying opportunities. Sometimes when advertisers buy a lot of ad spots, they might get a better deal from the news company or the if it's a newspaper or something like that. They might get a better deal than if you're just buying one at a time, like you would with an in-house operation. And they're specialists, right? When you work with an agency, you get somebody who is cross-trained across industries, but they do one specific part of marketing very, very well. If you have somebody in-house, right, they might need to be working on your Facebook ads, but they're also making the newspaper ad for you and editing your website, things like this. When you have an agency, you get a lot more specialization. The biggest disadvantage here of using that ad agency is obviously it can be you lose some level of control, right? You can't just walk down the hallway and have access to the person like you would in-house. You might jostle over their attention, right? I mean, with an agency, that necessitates them having more than just one client. So who's the client who gets the most attention, right? And then agencies can tend to be inefficient sometimes, and they can be expensive. So which one is the right answer? Well, it depends on the size of your company, depends on the goals, depends on the access that you have to that agency. What I tell folks is just find out what's right to you. There's no one right answer. It just depends on what's right for your company, what's right for your organization. All right, so let's go through kind of the basic setup of an ad agency. I've worked in agencies. I own my own agency. And so I wanted to make sure, though, it's one of those things that I don't think ever gets taught a lot of times in higher education, but I want you to know what an ad agency looks like, the general makeup. All right, so first thing we have is the creative department. Right, so our creative department are people like graphic designers, copywriters, general designers, right? The people who make pretty pictures, things like that. right? So you kind of see what a copywriter does and everything. These are the people who actually write words and blogs, and maybe it's an ad that they're writing, but and there's different types of copywriters too. It might be short form content where they're writing Facebook posts or tweets or something, or it might be long form where they're writing blogs and white papers, things like that. Right, and you can see the definition I've got down there with graphic designers as well. Next, we have our media department. And a lot of times, this isn't a firm way, by the way, that ad agencies work. A lot of times, your social media person might also be a copywriter as well, right? Or they might be, writing the social media copy, something like that, right? So this isn't necessarily hard and fast, and every agency doesn't necessarily have every one of these roles. So our media department, that might be the media planner, our social media staff, pay-per-click marketing, search engine optimization, stuff like that, right? And you can see kind of the definition of roles. And once again, if you guys are interested in entering this industry, I'm more than happy to tell you a little bit more about each of these positions. Next, you'd have the research and strategy department. This tends to be a department that, I love this department. I'm a strategist. And so, you're the person who's kind of at the captain's ship, steering the wheel and everything. Heavy demand right now for analytics people and market researchers. You can write your ticket with a big understanding of marketing analytics right now, particularly in entry-level positions. So if the big thing you need to know for analytics is not just how to look at numbers, but what those numbers are actually telling you. And then finally, account management. The account manager, this is a tough job. You're the person who's managing that client-agency relationship. So when you're at work, you are the representative for the client, making sure that stuff gets done on time, that it's high-quality work before the client actually sees it. And when you're interfacing with the client, him or herself, you're representing your agency, right? And so you're defending that work, and you're ensuring that that your team has all of the resources. You might be chasing down checks and things like that to make sure your client's paying on time, stuff like that. All right, I'd highly encourage you to read pages 194 and 198 in your book right now to read more about these cases for and against advertising. I think it's a really beneficial read. It'll certainly help you in your ongoing career, and it'll be a big benefit for you when you take your upcoming test. Make sure you're paying attention to that. We've got a test coming up, guys. I know it's a crunch semester, and it feels like we just got started, but we are in a very tight timeline this semester, okay? Feel free to reach out if there's anything I can do to be helpful. Hope you have a great day, guys, and go Mocs.